Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have Keith Gleason and Johnny C. of the podcast Indie Comics Relay. They do books such as Mighty Mascots, Sartana, and much more, and we talk about how to function and create as an indie comic book creator, why newsletters and podcasts are almost as vital as promoting on social media, and how they've created such a strong indie comic book community. All that and so much more on today's Inspired Inc. Comix Wellspring. And like your guys' books, I mean, they're wild, they're all over the place. Do you guys want to talk about them for a little bit? So people, I mean, Indie Comics Relay is so prominent in the indie network and it's such a great show, but I would love to highlight your guys' books a little bit more. Why don't you tell me more about them?
Yeah, Keith? Absolutely. Johnny. Oh, all right.
No, Keith, you go first.
I mean, I have, a handful of books, but the one that's my primary one that I work on is Mighty Mascots. Yeah. And you were just talking about fun books. That's what this is. It's like an homage, like to that time when we watched Saturday morning cartoons with the big bowl of cereal, that kind of thing. So it's basically about cereal mascots that brought to life by this wacky 3D printing experiment, and they become like a superhero team. So it's like, I compare it a lot to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the fact that the thing I always loved about the old Eastman and Laird Turtle books was that there was this absolutely absurd concept, like these turtles become ninjas by this mutagen stuff. But they treated it seriously. Like they talked, like they had they had character arcs, and they had, they would go through crises and they would break up and they would always find themselves back together. So I kind of treat it in that way, where it's like these guys will have story arcs and, things like that. So I like having that fun aspect, but I also like to write it like, the comics we grew up with, basically.
Yeah, drama, you know what I mean? Dramatize so much of it. Yeah. And it's so much, it's crazy how sometimes those stories become more powerful because they're lighter characters. And so when they feel pain, you feel that pain so much more in that sense.
Yeah, because you connect to them a little more and you're like, oh man, So yeah, I love that stuff. And I love making like a book that I can give to a little kid or an adult, like an all ages kind of book that would appeal to most people. So
that's awesome, man. That's so cool.
Thanks.
I like that Keith used Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as an example, because that in and of itself was a satire and a parody that was played very straight, right? So it was a book that was a very much pointedly a parody of things like Daredevil at that time. There's direct references in Ninja Turtles that are of of that era.
You know what I mean?
The hand in the foot, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then in turn, you look at Mighty Mascots and you look at how there's a lot of parody in there and there's a lot of satire in there. It's like, I love that Keith was able to honor indie comics of the past by creating Mighty Mascots and doing something that's in lineage, but uniquely and wholly his own. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of what makes that book so special and why it connects with so many people. It's such a genuine book.
I think that's what indie is too, is just being like, how can I take like a wild idea that just like doesn't seem like it'll go far, but I'm going to take it as far as I can and push it. I mean, the High Adventures of Weed Wizard and Bong Boy. I mean, that's essentially what it is. You want to find something that you find love and passionate about. And, superheroes take you in a certain direction. I think they inspire a lot of us, but we like taking that and just running with it. And that's where I think the best stories come from indie comics.
I agree. And I think like with comics too, there's no boundaries really. Like you could do anything. Like that's the beauty of it. That's why this storytelling medium, I think, attracts a lot of people because it's boundless, like you just can do as much as your imagination can take you, basically,
Yeah. And I think that's where, we're capturing the market so much more too, because I think the mainstream audience and a lot of people just in general feel like, oh, I want to get into comics, but all there is like superhero stuff or the occasional, there's Power Rangers maybe or one or two other things. But you're like, if you really dive in a bit deeper, you're going to find cooler and cooler things, like all the bands that inspired the mainstream bands, that's what you're gonna start discovering, and like
Yeah.
finding the real comics and the real inspiration and the real passion. Not to say that Marvel and DC don't have passion, but like the an indie creator's imagination and what they have to do to make those books come to life takes a lot of late nights, determination, time, like love, heart, struggles, rewards, and the overall result is this wild product, printed probably in a bizarre form too, or shape or something. And you're just like, this is insane. This is comics, really. This is art and words coming together to test yourself. Johnny, let's talk about your book a little bit as well too.
Well, I just wanted to kind of button up with a comment on what we were just talking about. It's like, it's indie comics. We're like, we are produced on the borrowed time of inspiration.
Yeah,
if that isn't too heady for you, right?
I like
it's
that,
like,
Johnny.
Yeah, because it's like I see those people who just put out book after book. Are you drinking? Hold on. Are you drinking the 7-Up?
Dude, it's awesome.
Right? All right. I'm sorry to break this interview real quick.
No, yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So
we
soda.
got
I'm a big
for
soda
dinner
freak.
last night.
Yeah, we had dinner last night, and I gave Keith and Amy late Christmas gifts, and it wasn't anything special, but included it was like a drink mix themed Christmas gift, right?
Yeah.
And included was 7-Up's very limited edition Shirley Temple flavored soda.
That sounds amazing.
Now,
honestly,
it's great.
It is a problem. And when I say that, it's as delicious and lip smacking as the best orange soda you've ever had.
Oh,
and it's limited. That's the other problem. So I literally drank it for the first time, goes, oh my God, this tastes like the Shirley Temples I had when I was a kid. I lost my mind and I literally like went and ordered like 12 2-liters from Wegmans week after week. I have a stockpile in my basement of this stuff. That's how good it is. I lost my mind over how good this 7-Up is. If you can find Shirley Temple 7-Up, or if you just want to come over to my house, I'll pour you a glass.
Dude, I need to get some. My girlfriend would love that.
I will bring a bottle.
Legit,
I will bring a bottle to IC3.
Oh, we would cry. She would cry. Honestly,
there you go.
Love that.
I'll bring a bottle to IC3, and then whoever wants to try one, we'll do shots of it.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, no doubt.
I'm sorry to get off track, Keith. Isn't it awesome?
It's great, dude.
Right,
Thank you for giving me that.
We need to get a sponsor now. Like honestly, that's what we need.
I know. So we call 7-Up. They owe the comic community a little bit of scratch right now.
Keeping you awake, keeping you inspired. 7-Up.
Exactly.
We got the slogan. There you go.
All right, where were we? I'm sorry.
Your book. That's where we're at.
All right, my stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, like Keith, there's a couple of projects I have.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one of my focused books is Surrounded by Death. It's kind of Mallrats meets The Walking Dead is the best way to describe the book and how I pitch it at conventions.
Already rad.
So that's the tone and the flavor of the book, and really it's an inspiration of those two things. Mallrats was very foundational for me in my young and teenage years growing up, connecting to it, finding this piece of media that kind of spoke to me at my age at that very specific time. So that was a very much an inspirational film in that regard. I mean, aside from being just fun and enjoyable, and I can watch it a million times over, you know what I mean? But and then The Walking Dead is that was it was a comic that when I read it, those comics, you pick them up and it's just like, oh, you have to devour them.
Oh, yeah.
I can think of a few in the past, Preacher being one of them. But Walking Dead, like when I first picked that up, I had to read every issue as it came out because I was so hooked on it. It was just such great storytelling. So that was impactful for me. So when it came to the point where I found myself being a creator in the realm of comics, when I was so specific, I'm going to give you a little bit of the origin of how Surrounded by Death came to be.
Yeah.
So in San Diego,
know if I know this.
In San Diego at Comic-Con, there's a really great program. It's called Creator Connection.
Yeah.
Have you been to
one of those? Yeah, I've attended one when I was
Oh.
trying to make my first comics back in the day. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Nice.
So what they do is they set it up like speed dating,
Mhm.
and you're sitting across from an artist. And then you have a writer, and then there's 5 minutes for you two to converse and kind of pitch ideas and writing styles and work styles, and to see if you guys can connect. Right? It's not meant to knock it out of the park and seal a deal on that spot. It's more of just kind of like an opening to be able to trade cards and see if this is somebody you can work with. There was one session that we had And Brandon, given that you've been through it, you kind of get an idea and a frame of reference.
Yeah.
But there was one artist and 23 or so writers.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like this poor girl, her name's Michelle Montrose, awesome watercolor artist.
Ooh.
She was like, I'm going to speak to 22 writers. Like this is lopsided.
Yes, yeah.
So at the time I only had my comic book Sartana, which is a spaghetti Western. And I was looking to kind of expand. And I was like, well, I want more content for my table. But I can only produce so much of my actual written work. So let me see if I can help somebody else get their project going. And I could have maybe like an editorial or like a creative like title on here, but it also enables me to be able to sell this book. Right.
Yeah.
So I set up as a producer. So writers were meeting with a artist who was Michelle, and then myself as a producer to pitch their stories. Wow. And in turn, I met a really awesome kid by the name of awesome guy by the name of Mark Elliott, who had this concept about a bunch of like people living in a mall, much like mall rats during the zombie apocalypse. And it wasn't like Walking Dead. It was more like mall rats in the way that they were kind of living like nothing was really wrong. And it was all about the little things and things like that. So I was like, oh, this is a really great concept. And he wanted to create it as a novel. And as I'm reading his pitch, I go, no, like I can see this visually in my head being just mapped out as a comic. So him and I spoke a lot after San Diego. So let's see, July, August, September, October. 3 months later, I was at New York Comic Con.
Yep.
And I'm waiting in line to get into the Walking Dead panel. And it's
what year was
packed.
this?
Pardon my language. If this was 2012, 2011.
Okay, cool. All right.
2013, maybe? Somewhere in that era.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 2012 and 2014, I can give you.
Okay,
I don't have my dates exactly.
2017, so I was wondering maybe we were there at the same year, but no, I was way before I got to go.
I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't cross paths. But anyways,
at some point, yeah,
for sure. So I'm waiting in line, and we're like, when you wait in line with people, you kind of like get to know them. You start to chit chat and you make friends. And with this this dude I met, it was just real cool guy, shaggy hair. He looked like a rock star, for a lack of a better description. And we're chit-chatting, and fellow's name is Joe Martinez. Joe Martinez had his friend Pam with him. We're all just chatting it out hard, becoming friends instantly.
Because you're in lines for a while.
Because you're in line for a long time.
Those lines are no joke.
And if you're just to yourself, I mean, that's one thing. But like, I'm outgoing, so I like to like talk to people and like whatever, and stick my nose in other people's business. But but that's how you make and meet friends, right?
Yeah.
So
I got the co-host for Apollo City Comics because I was waiting in line for Todd McFarlane for 3 hours, and then Brandon Moncada.
Were you really?
Became the co-host. Yeah, he became the co-host for years after that, until the last year and a half or so before when we stopped the show. But yeah, that's what happens. You just create friends in those moments.
You never know who you're going to share an elevator with. That's what I like to say.
Yep.
But long story short, Joe was like, oh, I'm looking to start making comics, or I'm looking to start illustrating again. And I go, well, it's funny you say that. I just met somebody who's looking to make a comic book, or we're looking to make a comic book. And we decided to collaborate and make Surrounded by Death. Cool. So that's how the story of that book came together. It's just friends from different conventions on different coasts, through me being the connective tissue that brought us all together to produce Surrounded by Death as a comic. And it's it's Mallrats meets The Walking Dead. It's the flavor of the book. And the first story arc involves the group that lives in the mall coming together to go on this dangerous expedition to go into a blocked off portion of the mall to get more of a very specific coffee blend that people love.
That's amazing. I love that.
And there's a little bit of action, there's a little bit of drama, but very little drama. And then a lot of it more is about friendships, relationships, and fighting zombies.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a fun twist. It's taking, the Kevin Smith aspect of conversations and translating it into, a slightly more like horrific aspect. You know what I mean? Like that's a cool like way to combine just fun influences. I just got Mallrats on like whatever Apple TV because it was like $4 or
Oh,
something, and I was like, I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
wait to rewatch this and show my girlfriend. It's a defining movie for me growing up. You know,
No,
it's so
yeah.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like I wanted to write something where it's like, what if TS and Brody were in a situation where they were like their life was at stake? You know what I mean? It's like that's kind of the thing I wanted to do, and they would still kind of maintain that like even keeled vibe. You know, like Brody's always like kind of like whatever, everything's cool, and then you got TS who was like having existential crises over just liking girls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. But you also keep the zombie stuff really good in there. Like it's not a joke, like the
Yeah,
zombie stuff is actually got the good horror elements to it too, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
good. It's
yeah,
all
yeah.
it's the juxtaposition that makes it work so well, I think.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you guys keep, both of you in that instance? I love hearing it because I know you guys are kind of like where I'm at. You have various projects in the works. You guys do podcasting. You guys have your day job. Like, where do you find balance and like able to hit deadlines, able to keep things consistent? Because keeping a podcast consistent can be really, really
Oh,
difficult.
crazy, yeah.
And the way you guys do it live Monday nights, you know what I mean? It's something people expect. It's now a pattern. It's like old, classic television, knowing Monday night, 9 p.m., I'm going to go hit up the show and check it out. Like, I know there's going to be a new episode waiting for me. Like, how do you guys keep consistent, inspired, always just showing up? Like, what is your guys' secret behind it?
I don't know. I mean, like, I know, like, I wanted to do a show. Like, I approached Johnny about being part of it, like, initially during COVID, like, is when it started. And I was like, it was like, I want to do a YouTube show. Didn't want to do necessarily a podcast, like, and put it on, MP3. And like, the live element I really liked about it. I mean, not saying that we couldn't do that down the road. It's just, just finding
More
the
of a late
time to
night
do that
vibe,
extra stuff. What's up?
You have more of a late night TV show vibe, like a Conan
Yeah.
O'Brien type of Letterman type of thing going on more than anything.
Yeah, I
within a
like that
podcast.
better. And we started incorporating like wacky videos. Now my wife is making videos for the channel with like funny moments that come up on the show.
It
like,
threw me off last time. It was a blast. Like it adds so much to the show, honestly.
I'll be premiering one on Monday night too.
Nice.
It was something that Harry told us about a month ago about his meeting Red Sox legend. Who is it? I forget that. Johnny Pesky.
Oh, Johnny Pesky, yeah.
And almost killing him, basically.
Oh my gosh, dude, I gotta watch that.
Really funny.
We're lucky to have Harry. He's a very comedic guest, and
Yes.
he doesn't try to be. He just is naturally very funny.
And he's a
great
guy
dude.
I used to work with too. That I think just started watching our show and was like a funny commentator, like a funny chat member. And then I saw him at a convention, and I was like, hey, why don't you come on the show and be part of the crew? And it's worked out well. At first it was a little awkward because because it was me and Johnny for so long, but now it's kind of like we figured it out. I think like how to.
He's creative. He's creative, but he's not like a comic creator per se.
Yeah.
So he gives a nice like outside perspective, which I think is nice because like when it gets to like Keith and I, and we kind of get like deep into the actual creative process, and we like he'll reel it back with something funny, so it's not too.
He's the dad joke of it all. You know what I mean? It's such it breaks like it kind of cracks through. It's a joke that neither one of you would make, and it's an observation neither one of you would ever make. And he has so much personality. It's what makes him so fun because when he does make those jokes, you're like, I did not see that coming. I didn't, or it'll spiral back to something, and you're just like, what? And it throws you for a spin because you're just in this creative on the spot type of environment, and then he's so loose and just has those moments.
Yeah,
it's a great element to have in your show.
Oh,
he's the Jackie the Joke Man of indie comics real life. If we're gonna talk Howard Stern like terms, like he's Jackie the Joke Man.
Yeah, definitely. And he does like the other thing that's impressive about him is when I send out the guest info.
Yeah, he was passed out on my lap.
He goes above and you got to have the cat. He goes above and beyond and researches the guests and like finds out like just minutia about them, and it'll come up in the show a lot, and
You were talking about like having a lot of time, especially to
Mhm.
prepare for a podcast, things like that. I used to be the one to always try to really hard make sure I read the comic. Not to say that Keith doesn't, but Keith has a lot on his plate too. Honest to
Yeah.
God, Keith really does the heavy lifting of Indie Comics Relay. He puts the videos together, he promotes the show. I really just show up and I be me. Like I have the easiest job.
But that's
And
what I want. Like I don't think I could do the show by myself. I mean, like I like having Johnny and Harry there. It's
Mhm.
something like you guys add so much to this show that I think it's one of those things, like it can't exist without the three of us
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
like
But to that point, I'm sorry, Brandon. I was gonna say, but to that point specifically, though, there'd be times where like I couldn't read the book because I was just so busy with work and other things and my own creative endeavors and life. And then Keith couldn't get it done because he was trying to get the show ready and together. And like that's kind of a lack when we have a guest on. We haven't read the book, so we can only get so in depth to that.
Yeah.
And then we were very lucky because Harry consistently reads the book of the guests. So where if I don't have the time or Keith doesn't have the time, Harry always does. And it's like you said, it's the Triforce now, where one of us fails, the other one steps in, and that keeps us a cohesive unit, much like the creative team on a comic book where we're filling in the differences and the gaps in our creative processes. It's the same thing for this. You know what I mean? That's what makes a team.
That's what you kind of need with the show and it makes it so difficult to do one solo. Like even me doing Inspired Ink, I'm not solo on this. I have Alex Batts who edits and helps me prepare and does the show notes and like everything. I kind of just show up to record and interview the guests. But like even when I did this, like I was terrified doing solo interviews. Like I've always done Apollo where I had 2 or 3 people with me and it was friends, it was conversations. And I had a flow, but going in solo, like my first few episodes, really daunting. I'm way used to it now, but like it's a really weird thing to wrap your head around. And you get so used to your team being there, you're kind of like you can't imagine certain stuff. And that's why when we brought back Apollo as a podcast again recently, we have like 4 of us on there because I was like, oh, I want a great
awesome.
Cast with us. Yeah,
I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah, we only have like 3 episodes out. We got to record again. We got so busy with just books.
Do you guys do it for YouTube or is it more like
YouTube?
You do? Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think I think we use the Spotify for podcasters now because it's free or something. I don't even. Okay. We used to use Podbean, and that's another thing. If you do the podcasting route to be on all the things, you're like, is it Buzzsprout? Is it Podbean? Do I do the Spotify
that's the other
thing?
Yeah. I would need another. I'd probably need an assistant if I ever looked at that side of it. Like because like I feel like just being on YouTube now though, because in cars you could just bring your cell phone and listen to YouTube on your cell phone, so you don't even need like to be on those podcast places. At least honestly. When there's certain YouTube channels I'll listen to in the car, and I'll just have my phone in the in the GPS holder, and I just not watch it, but I listen to it.
Yeah,
so,
it's kind of one of those.
Oh, I was just gonna say there are plugged in podcast apps. So to Brandon's point, it's like you could. It's just work. It's a lot of work, but I think that it might even be in like just like I think we've even talked about it before, Keith. It's just there might be some benefit in the future to taking episodes, chopping it down so it works cohesively for audio, and then representing it in a podcast app. And I think that's the beauty of doing a show like ours and doing it for so long is that we now are sitting on a lot of content that we can use consistently over and over, repackaged in any which way. That's beneficial for the future. You know what I mean? That's something that can help keep us going when we can't say do a live show or, if we, can't do the YouTube anymore, we can reuse that and redo it in other ways, recut it. Like there's so many things we can do, but having the content and all the material from over the years now is it's beneficial. It helps build the brand of the show. It helps cement us as part of the indie comics creator community as individuals who like to shine a spotlight, just like you, Brandon, on creators. And, it's good. I mean, it's good like that.
Well, I mean, like shows like Word Balloon, John Suntress, he'll go and bring back archived episodes and re-release them. And I always thought that was kind of a smart marketing idea to be like, oh, you're 500 episodes in. if you make it that far, and you guys are, you guys are on that track of having a huge list of content, like, and going back and being like, oh, I'm going to release episode 20 because this major event just happened and it coincided with that. Let me bring that out and just like
Yep.
replug it in the feed so like current
Yeah.
listeners can hear it. And I feel like, guys like you can do stuff like that and get away with it. And it's just kind of adding to your algorithm, adding to your downloads, like making people really go back to like, your earlier episodes too. It's also a fun comparison to, your evolution over the show. But
Yeah.
it all comes down to, do I have the time to do this and execute
it's like,
this? And,
yeah, and you
energy.
ask yourself, do I want to be making YouTube content or do I want to be creating comics?
Yeah.
And that's the fight you have. Although I feel like at the beginning it was tougher, and this might have been the same with you, Brandon. It's tougher, but once you have it incorporated into your daily schedule and your life, it gets a little easier to do.
Yep.
Like, the one thing I've been trying to do, because I try to release, besides our live stream, I try to release stuff on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So what I try to do is whenever we're live that day, I'll try to get the other stuff done for Wednesday, Friday, just so all the YouTube's done for the week. And then, then I have that time to work on other things, so
find a system so that,
exactly.
it can easily take up all of your time and your bandwidth, you know what I mean? And that's why even with Inspired Ink, I do bulk recordings. Like, I mean, this episode, it's, here it is, people listening, it's like February and we recorded in January, you know what I mean? But I try to line up like 6 or 8 in a week. And that way I'm like, okay, I'm set for this. I don't got to worry. All that has to do is Alex edits and starts uploading. And then he even gets all of his editing and uploading in a bulk done too. And so like, okay, cool, we're covered. Let's shift our bandwidth to all these other things. Because if you do it on certain, like, I don't know, if you're doing it like every single day when you're posting, you're just going to drive yourself crazy. It's like, you get, I mean, your comics will never come out either. Like, that's a whole different
You're
story.
just so stuck in this cycle. And like, I try to look at it as like half the life of an indie creator now needs to be promotion and marketing, and it's unfortunate, and I know no one wants to hear that, but it's the reality of
that's why we do what we do.
Being this, exactly. And so it's like I only want to put that 50% towards it, and then that's it. I don't want to touch it anymore. Because you guys, it's finding that balance.
You want to be more known as comic book creators, I think, than like
than podcasters
or YouTubers and everything. So there's such
or
a
the coffee
line.
guy.
Yep.
It's like one of those things where, like, even me, like I always try to tell people I make comics. I do Apollo City Comics. I try to push my books every time I do an interview, just to show people, like, I love interviewing. I love talking to people. But this is just part of what I do. This was like part of my Kevin Smith inspiration. You know what I mean? And where all that came from, and like the love of doing this, and I've been doing this since like 2018, podcasting wise. And so, like, it's a hard thing to let go of too, but I would never want it to overshadow what I'm doing in comics. Because the only reason why I started a podcast was to figure out how to break into comics. And now that I've done that, and I've kind of broken a little bit into both, I'm like, well, I got to keep these going to keep my comics alive. Like, it's really just to keep yourself moving and promoting yourself more than the actual show. Like, the show is an element of your creative process, essentially.
One feeds into the other.
And I also feel like YouTube and podcasting also gives you a little bit of an edge above people that just do Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, all that stuff, because you have that video element, you have that audio element, and you're interviewing creators and you talk about process. I feel like it permeates with people the way a newsletter does. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of cuts through the noise, which I wish I had more time to do something like that too.
I'm trying to get a
But
newsletter going, and I've been trying to get one
yeah,
going for 3 years now. Every
it's
year, I'm
yeah,
just like, this January, I'm launching my newsletter." And then, like, even this January, I got it prepped on Substack. I have a name. I prepped things. I pulled, emails from old Kickstarters, started it, and I was like, "I just gotta write my first letter." Dude, we're on week, like, 3 of January, and I'm like, "I'm gonna do it
yeah.
this weekend. I swear. I'm gonna start it. It's gonna happen." And it's just
Like
soon.
I messed around with newsletters for about a year,
Mhm.
and I could tell that it was a good thing because it was reaching people that my social media wasn't reaching. Like,
Yeah.
like they would hear from them, and I was like, "Oh, I loved your newsletter, this and that." The problem is doing the newsletter and doing it well, finding subjects to talk about, things like that, rather than
Being
just
consistent.
spamming stuff. It's yeah, that's the tough part. Like it's drawing more from that creative juice, that
Mhm.
you have so much, you only have so much reserve of,
Yeah.
so
And that's, a newsletter is also everyone's doing them right now too. Like every
it
creator,
is.
all your friends
Yeah.
are doing newsletters. Like I kind of trips me out how many Substack alerts I get now on my phone. And I'm like, oh, I
I
didn't
get
know
a
they
lot.
did that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know they did that. And I keep on wanting to start it. I have a cool name, Mood Shifts and Reality Shifts and Mood Swings. And so
I
it's
like
just like,
that.
this
Yeah.
is gonna be super rad. I just gotta launch it. But I'm behind on like 3 scripts. I have, podcasting to do. I have this to do. I'm trying to draw more now too. And it's like I also want to rest. I just don't want to
Yeah.
think about anything for a bit and just watch,
Well,
mindlessly
you
turn
also
off my
want to
brain.
have some time to enjoy media, enjoy comics,
Yeah.
enjoy a show, that everyone's talking about, and
Yes.
whatever. Like, so I get that. I try to work at creativity this like with a schedule too. Like, if I got a day off, like I only really work part-time,
Hmm.
but on those days that I do that I'm home, I work all day up till like 6 o'clock, and then I'm done. And I'll just go upstairs and enjoy the rest of the night or whatever. But like I try to, you know what I mean? I try
Yeah,
to
you got
stay
to do that.
consistent. You have to.
You need that downtime, and you need to feed yourself media, things that you enjoy, films. You have to read comics, you have to listen to music, you have to watch things that inspire your mind,
Hmm.
because that feeds your creativity. And a lot of people
Yeah.
I feel like some of the people who get writer's block or creative block, and I know I suffer from that too. It's almost like they haven't fed enough of what inspires them. They haven't,
Yeah.
indulged in enough media, that it's like that's why they're running into those things. They're not thinking through um the media that they are consuming, right? And
Yeah.
they may not be consuming enough of it in that
Yeah.
regard. And so you do need that downtime to be able to do that and help inspire you.
I always think of it as like your diet. You know what I mean? Like your creative diet is very
Yeah.
vital for creative. It's just like if you're, if
It's got
you're
to be a balance.
Yeah, a balance. Like, if you have too much sugar, you're gonna hurt and you're not gonna be able to really function well as a human. Like, or if you're gonna have a lot of sugar and then go work out, you're not gonna have a good workout. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But if you're feeding yourself good things and you're keeping a track of what you're, putting in your diet and you're, mixing in a little sugar, sure, for sure. You kind of need that, of
Yeah.
course, a treat. But like you need to have a concise diet to keep yourself, creatively flowing. If you just like freeze your diet and you're just what do you call it, like you're just like fasting like crazy, it's going to crash your body. And you can't
Yeah.
always fast, but fasting every so while is good for your body.
Yep.
I can't force myself to write. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know about other
right.
people. The people who can, bless them.
Mhm.
It's wonderful that they can do that, but I can't force myself to get that point. Even like creative projects, like I do enjoy taking on other people's creative projects that, they say, oh, hey, can you do this? Or can you do a short for my anthology or whatever? I like that because to me, what that does prove is that I can write something that's assigned to me. I could write somebody else's thing. But more often than not, I find that I struggle unless it's something that I conceive out of my head, because I feel like I have like I have more of a grasp on the concept,
Yeah.
so I can execute it more appropriately as opposed to something that's assigned to me. So that's one of the ways I like to challenge myself and push myself, is to take on other outside projects. But that's part of it too, right? Is
Mhm.
that you want to be able to what's the words I'm looking for? You want to be able to have a wide spectrum for your creativity and not just what you're kind of conceiving on your own. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find that balance. Sometimes you get lost in it. And I mean, sometimes I've been watching a lot of like hanging out with my girlfriend while I draw. We watch like a lot of reality TV, and it turns out I actually like a lot of it. I didn't think I'd ever give it a chance. Like, I'm super into like Love Is Blind and like RuPaul's Drag Race right now. It's like the Great British Baking Show. There's like the greatest things ever, and it's like it's one of those things. I was like, oh, now it's inspiring some of my work. So then when you're trying different foods and flavors, you're like, oh, I would have never tried this before. You know what I mean? Like switching up things too just can really, that's where corpse flower came from. I was just like, oh, well, like now we have these like, I'm like watching Drag Race, and then I'm like, oh, now like we have like these really cool ideas for characters and like, environments and
Oh.
everything. And I was like, I would have never thought about stuff like this before if I didn't change up my, my diet.
Yeah, like watch something out of your
Yeah.
like norm. That's kind of
Mhm.
cool. Interesting. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because it's like, so I put some pieces together recently. I have we all have a million stories in the back of the head,
Yeah.
our head, that we're waiting to tell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's those new ones that pop up every day that you're like, oh, well, I wish I have the time to
Yeah.
get to this one, right? But but taking what you consume and permeating into a concept, like, so two things I've been watching recently, right? One thing is to help combat insomnia. What I'll do is I'll leave the news on. I have to have like a TV on at night just to help me sleep.
Oh, yeah.
A little noise, a little light, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But what I'll do is I'll put the news on because it'll bore me to shit, and then I'll fall asleep.
Yeah.
But the other thing was I've been watching Studio 30 on the Sunset Strip, which was an
Oh, I
Aaron
remember
Sorkin
that
show.
show.
Yeah.
And it's all about like behind the scenes of SNL and trying to
Yeah.
like put this thing on, this show on, this weekly live show on. And I started to have like this idea of like, what if there was like a story of like a news organization and the people behind that, and it was like these two things that I consumed. I started seeing the threads of an idea for a story I want to tell, right? And it's like, there you go, that's the recipe right there of finding that inspiration and finding the ingredients to tell the story that you want to tell. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the way it works. I mean, today, like for example, me and my girlfriend were leaving like the grocery store real fast. We're gonna have like some snow blizzards. We're like, we need to get like quick groceries, so we're just okay for
Milk
the
and
weekend.
bread.
Yeah, literally, just so we don't have to encounter that stuff later.
Like, I have all this milk and bread, now I don't know what to do with it.
Honestly, yeah, this is all we got. Why did we just get milk and bread?
Why
You
don't we
can't
just
make
get milk and
anything.
bread?
No peanut butter,
Can we
no
just
jelly.
get Cheetos instead?
But like this morning, we were walking out and we saw something. We kept on seeing things in pairs today, and we're like, we should turn that into like a David Lynch story, because we were like, oh, let's watch Saturday morning cartoons, and we put on this Justice League episode, and it was a Justice League episode where like Solomon Grundy dies, and it was like really sad for like 8:30 in the morning, and we're like, okay, let's put on like Brave and the Bold, and then like it was like the second part of the Starro episode, and then Buona Beast dies, and then we're just like, what's up with this? Like, we're starting like this day so dark and dreary, and it was one we just encountered these things, and like we were leaving, we're like, so we've seen 2 deaths and 2 funerals today, and we're like, that's the start of a story. Like, we got to keep this idea going, and like we were kind of ripping off of it, right? Yeah. Like, and she had this weird dream about like baby skunks and whatnot, and she was telling me about it, and she's like, well, corpse flower is all about rebirth, and it's weird that we're writing a story about rebirth, and I'm having these weird dreams about like skunks that mean rebirth and whatnot, because she was like, I keep on thinking about it, and I looked it up and it said all this, and I was like, yeah, it's what you were saying earlier, Johnny, about like you're writing something and it's kind of coming into fruition in your life, and it's kind of a trippy thing, and we're like, man, I hope these 2 funerals, 2 deaths thing isn't part of like this train that you're going on and whatnot. But you build stories out of that. Like, if you don't mix up what you're doing, like it's not gonna happen. You're gonna be very stagnant. You're probably gonna be having like similar ideas or the same ideas kind of repeating, but not in a cool way where like you've seen that with Grant Morrison or David Lynch, where you're seeing the same themes kind of redone multiple times throughout their career. You're kind of more just like, I'm not doing anything new and creative. I'm just retelling something. So your diet's so vital. Oh, go on.
To that point, I would really like. I always advocate that people shouldn't be making comics just for the sake of making comics. Like, if you're just trying to, and this is kind of the B side to me wanting to work on other stuff and to ensure that I can just take a project project on. It doesn't have to be my own conceived idea, and I can execute it and get it done. That proves to me that I have the skill set to do that. But that being said, people shouldn't just be doing work for the sake of doing work. If you have a story, if you have an idea, if these things come together for you and they hit poignantly, that's when you should execute it. Look at movies. Some movies, the ones that are rushed out, aren't the ones that are the best.
Yeah.
But the ones that are in development hell forever and they spend so much time on it and then all of a sudden they put it together, it's like, it's fantastic. You know what I mean? So it's like that. Spend as much time with your story as possible.
Yeah.
Live with it.
Yeah.
Honestly. Put it in the drawer. Bring it back.
Yeah. And
if you still feel that spark, then it's worth making. Maybe it, you know, and again, infuse it with your life in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you guys do that? Like put away a story for a bit, and, you know, like
Absolutely.
you restart a script from memory and whatnot, things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When I finish a script, even if it's like a Mighty Mascots one, I put it away for at least a month and then look at it again, you know? So
yeah,
unless I'm trying to get it out and I got to do it in 2 weeks, but at least I try to not look at it for a while. And then when you read it, sometimes it's good, but it's missing something, and then other times you have to redo the entire thing, you know?
Yeah.
I've got some. Sorry, Brandon.
I was saying, sometimes you end up loving it way more than you thought too. That happened to me with the script. I was like, oh, I'm so scared to reread this and to like look into it. And I was reading it. I was like, this is
that's
dope.
happened a few times. I was like, who wrote this? This doesn't feel like me at all.
These transitions are fire, dude. Like, I know what I'm doing.
I tapped into some unknown part of my brain or something, you know? It's wild. Like when you get into that writer's trance where it's just, you look up and it's 2 hours later and you're, you know what I mean? You don't know what the hell's going on. It's just like
the muse takes over and your fingers just like fly at the keyboard, you know?
And we kind of imagine it always being like that too. You know what I mean? Where you're just like, oh, I mean, when you think about like, I guess when you're younger and you're just like, oh, I remember those days where I would just like 8 hours would go by and I would just be crafting stuff or working on things, or, you know, you're playing my bass, or you're just in the zone. And then like we get older and older and it seems like those moments kind of dwindle more and more, you know, because of life and busyness and cell phones and alerts and, you know, all this stuff that takes us away from people, you know what I mean? Just there's so many things. Like, and it's just those moments of just, you know, focus and like zen in that sense seems so rare, but pushing through that and remembering like it's not always like that. Like sometimes even 10-15 minutes of putting an idea to paper is the same amount of work and the same amount of effort, and you'll have the same kind of breakthroughs. It's just a bit more paced out. You're not eating a full meal, you're taking snacks at that point, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I always have ideas pop up in the shower.
Yeah.
It's because it's that zen moment where you're just kind of like lost and there's a little bit of music playing in the background. You're showering. It's like your mind is free to be able to start thinking of concepts and stories. If you go into a shower thinking of your comic, you're going to come out with like the whole 3 acts paced out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I went to a hypnotist for a while to like help like with what, but she explained that aspect to me, like about, and it made total sense. Like how, like, you know, like when you watch a really good movie, you're like, and you're way into it. You're in a trance. You're basically in a trance because you always look up and go, I can't believe that was 2 hours, you know, like it goes by like that. Like, and she said that's the same thing, like when you're driving with no music and just thinking, and same thing being in the shower, you're like, you're doing your thing, you know, you're cleaning yourself and everything, but your mind is like on another planet, and that's, you're in a trance like state. And that's when all these ideas pop off. Like, it's great.
It's one of those things. I think I saw a comedian talk about this actually, and they were saying like, you know, cell phones have destroyed us, like just destroyed us, and especially creativity. Like, and now that's why, like, you know, in the 90s and like the early 2000s and like, you know, probably growing up in the 80s and everything, you never heard about mindfulness because there was no need to think about mindfulness. Like you sit on the bus, you're just watching condensation drip for an hour. That's mindfulness. Like you're just, you know, you're waiting for like somebody to like meet up for lunch. You're not on your phone. You would just sit there and wait. Like that's mindfulness. You go for a walk. There wasn't distractions everywhere. And we have this device that pulls us every 5, 10, 15 minutes, like, and just alerts going off and catching up on things, and everyone being, before it was just a
Yeah,
landline that you get a hold of people, and now anyone can message you anytime, call you do I keep my
I
phone
know.
on do
It's
not disturb all day. Like, everything
yeah.
just goes to voicemail now. Like, I just can't. But like,
So
you need that break in your head, and those
Yeah,
are those moments, those mindful moments where you're like, oh, my
and
brain's
I'm
finally
glad
free.
I grew up without a cell
Yes.
phone, like, because, like, I find it real easy to put it away.
Mm.
Like,
yeah,
even at dinner last night, I didn't pull it out once last
yeah,
night when we were
didn't need to.
talking, like, didn't need to. Like, I find it real easy to be away from it.
That's
Like, but
awesome.
the
I hate
mornings
how
when I'm
much I
waking
check my
up,
phone. I hate it.
forget it. I'm, like, on it for, like, an hour before I even get out of bed. Like, yeah, at night and in the morning is the worst for me with that, but
You're
So
catching
it,
up to stuff, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Especially
that's what it
running
is.
things like shows and
Yeah.
like your comics. Like, there's so much emotion. You kind of want to just be on top of it before you feel like you're gonna like lose out on something, you know?
Yeah.
you're not as much using social media as much as keeping up with social media.
Yes.
And that's the real key
That's it.
indicator there. Now, so recently, last October, I was like massively hacked, and all my accounts went friggin' belly up.
Oh wow.
So I
It's
lost my
paradise.
Facebook. Yeah, I lost my Facebook, which I've had for over a decade and was one of the key components to my last Kickstarter campaign. And I lost my Twitter, which was also another key component. And these were the two main. When you look at my Kickstarter analytics, this is where a lot of my juice came from. So in this window of time where I was very like just distraught over losing these two avenues that not only just was like memories and photos of Comic Cons of past and people I was connected to and all that, I was like, this was also my outlet for where I connected to people
Mhm.
for these things. But also in that time frame, like I didn't want to go back on social media. I was
Yeah.
like, I was resistant to it. And I was like, I don't want to get back on. I was like, this was my unplugging
Yeah.
per se. Right. And that's where I realized it was like, you're not engaging with social media. You're just catching up. Like you said, every time I picked up my phone, it was just to make sure that I wasn't missing like somebody who's tweeting at me or whatever, it was just catching up in that. It
Yeah.
wasn't putting in to get what it'll give back to you
Mhm.
through that algorithm. Right. So,
Right.
but then on the flip side, I realized, oh shit, when I have to load my next campaign ready to go, I don't have these avenues. So that's where I eventually caved. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to reopen social media.
I did the
And I'll
same
have to
thing.
rebuild it.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Do this with a little bit more mindfulness this time around. So
I
that way
tried to cut mine and
it's
just
stable.
do like just the Apollo account, and I just like was like, this is it. This is, and then it became the Apollo account and my personal account at the same time. And I was like, you know what?
Okay.
I'm gonna create a personal account just so I could do friends and maybe some family I've lost connections with since I moved. And then that just became a second avenue to promote all my stuff. And then now it's just like the dual account where I'm like, yeah, they're both kind of the same. One's a little more personal, but
Yeah.
You know what? If it wasn't for me doing that, doing exactly that, Brandon, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have these fallback accounts that I'm now using to rebuild. So, first, number one, always change your password.
There you
Number
go.
two, two-factor authentication. Turn it on. If you don't have it, do it. If you use the same password or everything, shame on you. Don't do that. You're gonna get hacked like
Yeah,
I
I
did.
know. I need to work on that.
I need to
Oh yes,
diversify.
I
I'm
just
telling
started
you
using a
right
new
now,
password.
change your F word and passwords, people.
I
Do it
I
now.
I use the same like 2 words for every password, and it's terrible to even announce that on the show, but, like, I just do,
Yeah.
like, simple things, and then, like, I just created a new, like, more complicated password, like, maybe 3 months ago, and I was like, "I need to switch everything because all my" having an iPhone, it always tells you, "Oh, your password's been compromised. Do you wanna update it?" And you're like, "I don't wanna update it." Like,
Listen to
and,
it.
like,
Yeah.
you're right.
I
You need to
ignored
listen
it.
to it.
Listen to it.
This is fact. You
but
want a
but
success?
also to that point, that unplugged period was really nice because, like
I
you
bet.
said, mindfulness returned to me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right?
Yep.
I was able to open my eyes and see around me once again that you feel like you lose a little bit when you're too much in the digital
Oh,
age.
yes,
You know
completely.
what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and I can't stand it. I hate putting updates out. I hate like, and I retweet things or, repost things way too much, and I feel like my brain melting when I'm on social media, and I'm on it so much, especially doing the
Yeah.
Comix Wellspring and everything else we do. it's so much, and you're just like, I really do try to just put it down and be like, I'm going to talk to like two people after a certain time of day. I ignore all my stuff, and there's just like unread messages now. I'm trying to find a real balance of like, I don't need to respond to everyone, if they're asking stuff. Like, I'll get back to them when I can, and I'm really trying to
Yeah.
have that boundary of like, if I don't have the mental capacity, and if I'm just attacking it to talk to Eric or Javi because we're putting books together, I'm like, I need to just talk to those guys, and then not
Bingo.
doom scroll too long. Find something funny and get off. Like, just get one laugh out of it.
Or pick up the phone and talk to him. On the phone rather than over.
We're demonizing social media pretty bad for a thing that helps support the indie comics community.
Yes, yeah, I understand.
But like to that point, like what you said, it's like it is something that like it's when it doesn't work, right? When the algorithms work against us, when there's other factors involved, right? That's where it kind of like sidewinds. But like when it's working and when you're using it and you're connecting with people, that's the thing that people have to not forget is the way social media works is it's not just you going, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. It's like you have to go in there and you have to interact with people.
It's a diet.
You have to interact with strangers.
Yeah.
You have to ride a hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helps build your network. And that's what helps make you discoverable. That's what helps make these individuals on Instagram and the now soon to be defunct TikTok kings overnight, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, again, it comes back to like, you got to see how much your diet can handle. Like, you can't just pour yourself into that because you're not going to feel good. Like, you're going to have too much of anything. You eat too much sushi, you're still going to feel sick. It doesn't matter how
sushi's great.
Good. Yeah, it's so good. You can handle so much of it.
I could put away some sushi, kid.
You definitely can. And then like, you're going to get that one piece and you're like, this was one too much. Like, I should have stopped. Like, and that's how it all bounces back somehow. And, I think that's the thing about being a creator too, is like, you have to know when just creating is too much, when just consuming, because we do get caught up in like, oh, I'm trying to get inspired and I'm just reading this like crazy, or I'm consuming this way too much. And that can distract you from even creating. So putting too much focus on the podcast, now you're not creating, or now you're too creating. And now you're just like, oh, I got to fund all this, or I got to find ways to market it. And now you got to shift gears. It's a weird thing. It's weird being an indie creator because you're learning on your own.
I lost audio, guys. Hang on one sec.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Can you hear
Sorry,
it?
I lost audio. Hold on.
I was going to say, to that point, the other thing too, I mean, think about all the other stuff we as creators have to do, like conventions. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things beyond just making the comic that we have to figure out, and find that time to do and stuff.
We don't have managements. We have each other. You know what I mean? That's really what it is that I'll tell you my secret and my success. You'll tell me your secret and success. Like, even when we go to the same cons, like sometimes I'm at cons and some people have a great weekend. And then some people have a terrible weekend. Oh, there we go. Cool. And so conventions are one of those things where you're like, finding the secret behind it and sharing that and having understand, oh, you did this and I didn't do that at this convention. I'll try that next time. And figuring out, or maybe you're just put in a bad spot and now you've learned lessons. It's all about learning and sharing. But if you don't communicate and network and make friends and, trade those secrets and experiences, you're kind of just be a one-man show and being like, well, this didn't work. I don't know what the answer is. I thought I did everything right. There's no guidebook, really. Even if we make a guidebook, it's going to be a fairly like, here's a general idea of what can happen.
It changes a lot. Like, I mean, I'm constantly playing around with the setup and everything else. And
and figuring out where you do good in which cities. Like, that's a big thing I'm learning. I mean, I didn't do too great at Heroes Con. Like, I've only sold a handful of books, and I was in a weird spot. Like, I was right next to Andy Kubert and like, I forget, Jimmy Palmoni and Amanda Connor were right there. So they were all like, oh wow, right next to me. And so nobody
was
cared
that the Indie Island that they do? Were you in that?
They were like, that was like, in fact, that place is like an L. And so we were
Oh,
like at the
okay.
bottom of the L and everyone was
Oh,
in the
okay.
top part of the L. And so we were just like stuffed in a corner. And like I was giving out free anthology flyers. And I remember I was going down this entire path because there was a huge line of some signing for some, bigger creator. And I was like, oh, this is gold. I'm just going to talk to all these people at once. And I was like, free anthology, indie comics. And everyone's like, no, 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 no. And then like I handed out like maybe 3 of them that were like, yeah, I'll take it, kid. And I got to the end of the line and somebody was like, dude, I've been watching you since you were way down there and you handed it out about 3 of them, but you never gave up. So dude, good job. I'll take one for sure. Like just for your efforts. Like I will look into this. And I was like, thank you, dude.
That's
Like, thank you
great.
so much. But
Yeah, you can't get discouraged in those situations for sure. That's the worst that can happen.
Right.
It's almost like you can't go free because it devalues the product.
Yeah.
But it's hard to push and sell a product as well. So it's like you got to find that in between.
Well, and then, Heroes wasn't great. And then I go up to Nickel City Con up in Buffalo, New York, and dude, I killed it. Like everybody
Nice.
was buying anthologies. Like I had a great weekend every day. I was just shocked. And it's a weird formula. Like I did really good up north, but like in the south, I wasn't doing too great. But then like, in my local area, I do pretty wonderful. So it's just finding where your series and your, genre speaks to and what
Yeah.
cons that are too. I mean, figuring out what cons are good for you guys might not work for Apollo at all, and vice versa. It's a different crowd almost you're having to work with.
Do you guys look at
agree.
the population of a city when you do the convention that you choose by any chance?
Not often. I think I'm so
Sometimes.
early in it. I haven't really gone into that. I kind of just like find
I-
opportunities. You know what I mean? At
I
this
mean,
point.
So that's one of the things, like I know San Diego's what it is. I know New York what it is. I know C2E2 what it is, right?
Mhm.
But if I'm looking at a show where I've never traveled to, I will look at what the city's population is. What is is there a local college?
Oh yeah.
These are things that like I want to make sure that I'm shopping to my demographic.
Oh,
Because if I'm going to do
yeah.
a convention in a podunk nowhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to expect podunk nowhere, right? So, and sometimes that works too, because I'm not above that. You know what I
and
mean?
sometimes
I'd
those
like
people don't have anything else, so they're hyped to get that. You know what I mean?
bingo. But you have to understand where you're going to be going to and what you may get from it. And I think some people don't really look that far into like, oh, I'm going to do a convention and I'm going to table and I'm going to bring my goods and that's that. Well, it's like, okay, well, that's good. But you also have to think about like, if I'm going to bring my goods to, and this is no disrespect, but if I'm going to bring my goods to a library show,
Mhm.
that's a lot different than a
Oh
Comic-Con.
yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a lot different than like a craft fair
Mhm.
or a street fair or an art festival. Like these are different things that you want to think about the way you program to when you attend to them, including the audience and the amount of people. So like I've already looked at IC3.
Yeah.
You guys are right nearest college.
Mhm.
Yeah, isn't it in a college?
It's actually
Oh,
in the
yeah.
college,
Yeah, it's
isn't
actually
it?
in a
Yeah.
college. Yeah.
Yeah, so there
exactly.
you go. Like the audience is built in. And then you guys promote the hell out of it.
Mhm.
And it's comprised of so many indie creators who through their social media outlets will let people know I'm going to be at IC3. That's a show that you want to attend. That's a show you want to do. So these are things you got to think through when you're picking and choosing your battles.
Mhm.
And then you have to do that in light of sometimes you'll have a year like 2024, which I know across the board, a lot of people struggled overall. Now, that's not to say there weren't good shows or good things out there, but consistently I was down. Like
You're really right about that.
30%
I think
Yeah.
from
from the prior
Kickstarters
year.
to like cons, I think everyone had a really weird 2024.
Yeah.
The year before when we launched our punk anthology and Cybersync, our Kickstarters were between the high $4,000 to $5,000, and then they dropped to about half of that, about 2K on Kickstarter, and just going right over 2K in our books. But I mean, and that's with massive pushing and live videos and doing all of that.
Yeah,
but we saw
right.
this weird shift in things, and I sold books like crazy in 2023, and it seemed to be like I didn't even need to do a reprint in 2024. And it's interesting hearing you guys say that as well, because I feel like that was a big thing last year. I feel like 2025, all these creators are growing and strong, but I think we're also in a period where the landscape has changed so much with how creators function. A lot of people got into the game because of COVID, and they had that downtime because of COVID, and they were working through that, and they started these projects. But now like work has changed for a lot of people since then,
Yeah.
4 years into like wherever we are in the spectrum of disasters of the world. And so like, people are not so much working from home. People are like, priorities are shifting, or they realize how hard comics got, or, everything that's involved with it. So you have people dropping off, but at the same time, we're getting a new reemergence of newer creators coming out with comics right now. So it's like a weird wave we're kind of going through. That we had all the people from COVID inspire an entire new wave of people. So I think we're going to see that spike and uptick this year versus last year.
So
Yeah.
let's take a wider step back and look at that in a 10-year window. What that is, that's filtration of who can cut it and who can hack it and who can't.
Yeah.
Right? Like you got to be able to not only make a good book, but you got to be able to get out there and hustle it too.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to not only hustle it, but you have to get it into the right hands. And if your goal is to end up at one of the big 2 to 3 or however you want to scale them, then that's a whole different ball game too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to think about where you want to be as a creator if you're going to start making comics. I don't think it helps that schools are teaching how to make a graphic novel to people, because then a lot of pie-eyed people are out there thinking I can make a comic book. And yeah, you can. And I encourage you to, but have your expectations in check of where that comic
they should teach that in the class. Hopefully.
That's what they forget to teach.
Yeah.
And ego is tough too, because people like you once you create something, you think you're a god.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. It's very
Go
true.
down, homie. You made a fucking comic book. So did we. Get in line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's the thing. But that's not a disparagement. And I'm not trying to tear anybody down at all. But it's just like, you have to think about the landscape. And that's part of it.
When you talk about the education aspect of it too, when I was in college, I had a comic book making class, or like a comic book class in general. And it was like, I was really disappointed in it. Because it gave me like, for one, I thought, me being pretentious going in, I was like, I should hear about Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman and all these great. We should be talking about the Invisibles and Sandman and Shade the Changing Man and Vertigo and Shelley Bond and like the important comics, and like talk about Fantagraphics and Love Is Rocks. We didn't talk about any of that. We went to Comixology and read the free comics that were on Comixology. And then my professor told us about like his cat comic that he was kickstarting and everything. And so I feel like I got like a weird area of like, I'm sorry, Booby, you got to move, dude. That's just taking up the camera right now. I got this weird spectrum of like Comixology comics that like I was never even interested in the first place. Like for the freebies, like they're cool because they're free and you can check it out. But then I was also not introduced to like an indie comic that was inspiring enough for me to be like, oh, indie is where I need to be at. Like you need to have kind of like what we do here at the show. Like you need to have like really good indie creators be there to showcase so that they can inspire other people to make indie comics. Because if you're not being shown how cool indie comics can be, you're not going to like inspire people to go that route and challenge and like show how hard it is. It's one thing to be like, oh, you want to go make a comic, but like it's what we've talked about on this entire episode so far is that it's not just that. It's finding time to do your podcast to promote your comic and your newsletter to be interviewed on shows and to figure out the business aspect and conventions and printing and financing and crowdfunding and finding a team and like knowing what ideas are possible. Dude, that's just like the first layer of like, oh, I put my first book out. Like that's layer one.
That's why it's important to make a comic book for nobody but yourself. And if other people like it, fucking rad.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yep. I love that a lot. I like that idea a lot.
And I mean, gosh, I think that's like, that's a great way as we start to close up the show here. It's already been an hour, which is, it trips me out because every time I talk to you guys, I feel like I could go on for like 5-6 hours.
So much
like,
fun. Yeah, we can talk shop all night long.
And it's something insightful because I think what you guys do as creators is so powerful and so much fun. And the way you guys operate and show like really what it does take to try to find some grounding and some success. And I'm not saying every comic creator like, oh, go start your podcast, go start your show, but like be involved in your community with these type of things. Like go find Indie Comics Relay and check out their episodes, do some research. Kind of like when you would go pitch to a publisher, you should do that to shows and podcasts. Like what are they looking for? who do they showcase? I'm sure you, just like I've gotten plenty of requests for Apollo and for, Inspired Ink, and just like that has nothing to do with what we do on the show. Like, I don't do Inspired Ink to promote Kickstarters. We kind of save that for spotlights now. That's why we made that show. But like, if you don't do your history, you're not going to mend well and like get on the shows you want to be on.
Yeah.
It's so much work.
Yeah, like
too.
even if I get asked to be on the show and I've never been on it, I usually try to carve out some time to watch a couple episodes to get the flow of the show.
And we don't feel so lost in it too, you know what I mean?
Right. Like, and then the added bonus though, sometimes you end up loving the show,
Yes, yeah.
which is great, so yeah, I totally agree with you on that. You should definitely not just blindly email somebody, go check out a few of them, see if it works for you. And then,
is it part of your
go for it.
demographic that you're trying to capture? Is it like reaching the people you want to reach? Are they starting out? Are they small? Are they big? And I think there's so much to take in when you're, we give a lot of creators, both of us, a lot of opportunities on these shows, and we try to showcase them and highlight them while promoting our own work. And that's part of the community too, is that you want to find people like us, kind of, like we're just like, we love your work and we're proud of you, but we're also like, hey, check out my book too. Like, please,
yeah, right.
please support my book.
Exactly.
Would you guys have anything coming up this next year you guys want to announce or talk about a little bit? Releases, any other cons you're going to?
Go ahead, Johnny. I know you'll be at the major shows, right?
Yeah, so I'm already signed up and expected to be at San Diego Comic-Con. I'm going to be at New York Comic-Con. I have Terrificon in Connecticut set up. I have IC3, which I'm very highly looking forward to, and I plan to take advantage of some of those awesome Comix Wellspring promos that are running right now. Where you can get a holochrome covers at a discounted rate. That was a very exciting email as an indie creator looking for a break. That is something that I definitely want to look into and invest into. I would probably get them printed and not bring them to IC3 only because everybody will have them there then. But I will bring them to San Diego. I'll probably bring them to New York, and those type of covers, they'll catch an eye. So I love when, you guys are able to do something like that and give us a little bit of a boost there. I felt like, oh man, that was awesome. But I've got IC3 coming up. I look for little shows in between. I'm the MC for Saratoga Comic-Con. So if you do Saratoga Comic-Con, you'll hear my voice telling you what time the panels start and which guests to go get signatures from at that very moment.
That's cool.
And let's see, as far as projects coming up, I do have an anthology of shorts that were produced for other anthologies that never came together. So I'm going to collect those into my own at some point. And I was going to bring it to Kickstarter. I just don't know when. I like to take a look at the landscape, and when it feels right, I'll probably launch. But I'm noticing, like you said, people are struggling. So I want to start to see a little bit of what 2025 looks like before I start to plan that campaign. But in the meantime, I'm going to build the page. And
never too late or too early to build that page because it takes
exactly, and that way you get the notifications up, right? But I'm still waiting on some artwork too, so I just want all my pieces together before I start, kind of putting out some of that. Let's see. I've got my collaborator, Joe Arnold. We're going to do more of the very first comic book I put out, Sartana. Ooh. So it's a spaghetti Western. So keep an eye out for that. If you follow my Instagram, I'm going to do all my social medias right now. Instagram, Johnny C 138. Look for that for visual art updates from my collaborators that I share. I'm on Blue Sky, the Johnny C. I'm back on Twitter or X at SCHJOAY. That's pronounced Shoei. and let's see, where else am I at? I'm
Comix Relay.
I got Indie Comix Relay, but I figured you were going to promote that, Keith. You're going to promote Indie Comix Relay, Keith. But if you follow me on Facebook at Your Johnny C, as in possessive, there's my like page, and that's where I always post when we go live, and that's where you'll be able to see me and Keith Monday nights for Indie Comix Relay.
And I'll be on the show on March 10th. I'm so excited to be back on the show.
Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be awesome.
Yep.
Keith. Yeah, so Indie Comix Relay definitely Monday night, every other Monday, sometimes weekly. Sometimes we're trying to get back to our bi-weekly schedule. It's just easier for us. And yeah, so that's every Monday. And then also during the week, I'll put up little things like comic reviews, indie comic reviews, and tips and bits from our shows that are like where we talked about something really cool or provocative. I put that as an episode, things like that. And then as far as comics, I got a Mighty Mascots number 10 coming out sometime this year.
Love that.
Hopefully by the spring. But me and Johnny talked about this too. We want to like try to get our production levels up a little more. Like, it feels like I've been only producing like a comic once a year, and I want to get up to like 2 or 3 a year. You know,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So that's what my goal this year is, to try to get like 3 books out. One Mighty Mascots. I'd like to continue a series that I started called Kids Switch. I did the number 1 issue.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a 4-issue mini. Never made the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. So I want to get back to it and complete that one. So I'd like to do that. And then I have this other one that's just been burning a hole in my head for a while that I want to get out. It's got to deal with social media and superpowers and things like that. So I want to try to get that on the paper this year. And then as far as conventions, I don't go as far as Johnny. I'm usually like pretty much in the New England area. I'll be at IC3. I'll definitely be at Terrificon and a few of the other ones. There's a lot of ones that pop up in between that I'm not booked at right now, but I tend to do a lot of the smaller shows. And then also I end up doing a lot of other things like not craft fairs, but like street festivals and
art
I love stuff like that.
That stuff's great. Like, and it's also an untapped source for creators, you know.
I say that all the time. Find the outside places other than comic cons, you know, like go to your horror fest, go to your, art fest, go to your, if you have a
shocked
food comic,
at how well you would do outside, because a lot of times there's a lot of family elements at these things, and you tend to be the only one with pop culture, comics, things like that. And my wife does like prints, and things like that. So yeah, you do stand out. And the problem with those shows is you have to spend a little money. You need your own tables. Usually you need your own tents, things like that. But if you invest in it, you can make it work, though.
It's your business, again, business building, knowing to be prepared for anything. You are a pop-up shop. So when you do your pop-up shop, you got to know how to be versatile in many of these ways too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then also, I forgot to mention, I also run a Comic-Con.
Yes. Yeah. I meant to bring that up way in the beginning.
Plastic City Comic-Con. That's happening in August. So that we're definitely, if you're an indie creator, within I'd say 50 or 100 mile radius, definitely check it out. I think you would do well. We bring in a good crowd, and we don't charge a lot for admission.
Right. Yeah,
so
it's
like,
not
people have money.
Yeah, it's mainly creator focused. It's a great show.
I gotta try to hit that one up this year if that lines up with my schedule. That'd be super great. That'd be a lot of fun to hang out.
That would be cool, man. Yeah, hit me up.
Definitely.
So like, we definitely get a lot of people that come back every year because they do well at the show. So
cool. I love that. You guys are doing so much for the comic book community and just like for yourselves too. And I think that's what's so rewarding is that you're not necessarily, I don't feel like you guys, I don't think, either one of us in these positions, like we're not doing it for any specific reason. We get perks out of promoting ourselves, but we also love promoting other people and talking to other people. It's like just like a love and a passion I think we have for being part of this.
I love the community. That's why like I feel like that's part of it. Like how often me and Johnny will go to Comic Cons and just see everybody. It's like a party. Like that's what I love about it. I love the creative aspect, but the community all mixed together. I think that's the best part about all of this.
And like talking to people that you've interviewed or just met like this and get to see them face to face for the first time. It's so exciting. It's,
that's nice too,
I always think of it like, when we were kids and it was like, you're 5 and it's like, there's a birthday party on Saturday and everyone's super excited and hyped. And then you all get to go hang out like outside of school and it's like extra fun for some reason,
Yeah.
It feels like for all of us.
That feeling in our adulthood, basically.
The worst though is when you interview somebody, because we've interviewed so many people at this point, they come up and, hey man, and you're like, Who is that again?
Sometimes it takes me a second to refresh.
It does. It does.
I feel you.
The trick. You want to know? All right, I'm going to let you guys in on the secret. You ready? You want to know the Johnny C secret to trying to remember people's names?
Okay.
Introduce the person next to you to them.
There you
There
go.
you go.
Hey, have you met this person? No? Boom. Oh, all right, Chris. Or all right, Bill. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
boom, there you go.
Oh
That's
my
the
gosh.
way out. You
That's
got to
the
be
way.
smart like that.
I love it.
Great.
If you see me introducing somebody to somebody else, it's because I forgot your name. I'm sorry.
Everyone knows now. Everyone's gonna be aware. Everyone at IC3 is gonna be like, "Bring Johnny over here," just like
You know, I'm introducing everybody to everybody. He just doesn't
show
remember
twice,
that guy's
dude.
name.
I love that. I love everything you guys are doing, and I'm so thank you for saying everything about CWS. We're trying so many cool new things to keep creators inspired, just going part of the community. We're doing a bunch of new initiatives, a lot of educational stuff this year. We just released blue line paper for artists to make it more cost efficient and easier, and it's typically what I draw with every night on Spilding. So I'm happy to supply creators with art supplies and everything, giving options. I think that's why now I'm trying to connect with creators more, is that not every creator realizes what you can do with the foil book, what you can do to elevate your Kickstarter, your table setup, and the payoffs for all that. So I'm trying to get more one-on-one time with creators to help generate ideas so they could have more success. Like, it is more finances in some aspects, but that means you're going to have more success and a better product in front of people. And I love to everyone should have a cool foil book on their table. It's just going to stand out. Yeah. Once I learned that, I was like, this is a secret everyone needs to know about. Like, you're going to make a couple extra bucks and people are going to have this exclusive product and it's going to do well. And, just coaching and helping people navigate the business of comics. And that's what I really aim to do this year for CWS, is how do we make everyone's setup 10 times better than it was? How do we make everyone stand out at the convention, So yeah, we're working on cool stuff, and people like you always keep us fueled, and I love talking to you guys. So I'm glad we got to catch up and have this episode.
Likewise.
It was a long time coming.
There's a few things out there that help indie creators feel like they have their back.
Yeah.
I think you get that I get that feeling from IC3.
Mm-hmm.
I get that feeling from Comix Wellspring. I get that feeling from Global Comics. All these avenues of places that just you guys aren't out to just be in it for yourselves. You're out to help boost the community. So to that point, I greatly appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Same thing to you guys in your show and what you guys do and the opportunities you give and the time you carve for people,
I don't like to say that we're on a soapbox saying, what it is, because we know better. I just think we like to share our, what our experience is to help make everybody else, a little bit more, or basically use our knowledge to help make things smoother for you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
History lessons. Right. How do you improve? What can you learn? I mean, to tell you the truth, this is why I feel like I've had success with Apollo City Comics, is that I'm so close to Mark Bernal, who runs Lesser Known Comics. And when I started making the imprint and doing all that, I was like, I'm watching everything you're doing. I'm going to pull what I think works and I'm going to change what I think doesn't. And that's just what you do. It's like getting feedback for your script. You're like, okay, I like some of what you said. I'm not going to take all of it, but I do like some of these key points and I'm going to run with it. And you just pull from it.
There's no magic bullet. It's just however you do it.
Yeah. It's just like when you're creating and you're inspired by Kirby and Ditko and everything, you're not trying to mimic them. It's coming out your own way, but you've learned the lessons they've taught you and you've analyzed them. It's the same thing. Making comics and publishing and doing all that. It's just analytical work. You have to just mindfulness, kick back, study, just watch for a little bit, and then go and put it into act. So, and at that, I think that's a great closer for this episode.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for your time. I can't wait to hang soon. And to our audience, as always, check out Comix Wellspring. And if you ever have any questions, shoot us a message. We have so many cool announcements coming. Don't forget, Spilled Week every week is jam-packed with awesome creators. So tune in every Thursday night. Don't forget, if you have questions about foiling, ordering, shoot me a message, Brandon@comixwellspring.com. I will help you every step of the way, from your Kickstarter to, printing your book to choosing options. I'm here to help you guys. I'm hyped to be doing that more this year. And thanks for hanging. Stay creative and stay inspired.
Comic books to life. comics with Comix Wellspring.